Everybody, we are on. Thanks for coming again. Hi, John. It's my pleasure to introduce my friend Adrian Sanier tonight. Adrian received his PhD from Michigan State in 1988. Since that time, he has held positions of increasing responsibility with Applicon, Simlink, and engineering animation. He joined the faculty at ISU as Stanley Professor of Interdisciplinary Engineering, where he also served as Associate Director for the Virtual Reality Application Center. So he's really one of us. Until August 2005, I'm sad to say, when he left and took a position at Arizona State University as the University Technology Officer. He works out of the Office of the President to develop and implement a 5-year strategic plan for the application and use of information and technology across the university. Please help me welcome Adrian Sanier.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. This is like becoming an annual pilgrimage for me. It's really exciting to see so many people that I know, and also people I don't know, which is cool. I noticed that it's a pattern among speakers at this course to apologize for their remarks beforehand. I know the speaker last night did that, and I'm going to do the same thing. We're talking about a subject that's really big, really new. It's vastly interesting to so many of us, and we know that it's shaping our world, and so it drives anybody who loves the sound of their own voice as much as I do to want to just talk about what they think. And so I apologize beforehand for deviating from what is true to just talking about what I think. So my father was a great pessimist. I grew up learning about pessimism early. I would ride with him in the car, and this is sort of in the late 1960s, early 1970s. It was very clear that the earth was not going to last beyond sort of 1975. There was really no point in living. You know, Social Security, just a litany of things that children should never hear, I would hear, and it was just so obvious that there was no hope. But you have grown up in a completely different world, because your team won, the wall came down, history is over, we win. Enormous things are happening in our culture. We have iPods, for goodness sakes. We communicate you're like addicted to technological change. You take it for granted that it will extend across the whole world. All of us are sort of knit into this fabric. We know where our friends are. They're everywhere. They answer our tech support calls in India. We know that this fabric across... And a picture like that says it all. A picture like that shows the world lit up from space. But always now, at the back of our mind, especially since 9/11, right? Always now the four horsemen. It's like the ghost of my father come back. Like, oh, interesting, your plans to continue this technological progress. Interesting that you believe you have made war irrelevant, that no economic system will rival yours, that there'll be this unbroken string of progress. So I want to stop at this moment and ask, what are you worried about? What are you worried about? What's the number one thing that you're concerned about?
Failure.
Failure. Interesting. Okay. Give me a more global issue. Something you're worried about.
Lack of oil.
Lack of oil. Excellent. Give me another one. But you can't repeat one. Go ahead. Some major challenge to this unbroken stream of technological progress. His shirt says it all. Your inferiority complex might be justified, it says. So, no, seriously, give me a thing you're concerned about. Something that looks scary. Everything's fine? See, it's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. Not having a job, I like that one. That's a good one. Did you say global job security? Local job security. Very good. Give me another one. Global warming, fantastic. See, there we go. That was awesome. Right on target. I just need to give him a minute. Give me another one. Sustainability, fantastic. We're worried about political instability. Let's keep it safe in here. What? Give me something else. All right, I'm going to submit to you that they fit in these categories. The first one is the fear of running out. Ever since I was a boy, always afraid. I hated getting toys with batteries because they run out. And man, we're running out. How much chromium is there in the world? Is there enough? Like, have you heard what's happening in Africa? The amount of investment that China is putting in Africa in almost a neo-colonial way to swap for mining rights. And they've got a lot of money. My friend Jim Bernard thinks about it every day. How much of the West's money is being held in debt? Right? Our debt held by China. They're using our dollars buying up mining rights in Africa. That sounds pretty scary. What if we run out? You've got to be concerned about oil if you're thinking about anything at all. Got to be. And water pales in comparison. Listen to me, I live in the desert. And I go up to the top of the mountains in the desert and I look across this valley and I think to myself, this whole deal depends on the Colorado River, and the Colorado River is shrinking every year. We're in the midst of a 20-year drought. Meanwhile, a city the size of Rochester, New York is moving to Phoenix every year. And nobody's doing the math. Do you know what I mean by nobody's doing the math? Like nobody's actually figuring out whether there'll be enough water. They just move and there's enough water now, so I guess it'll be all right. So the fear of running out, absolutely a huge problem for us. Absolutely. So that's why I chose death as that horseman, the running out horseman. What's that? No, that's death, baby. No, you're right. That's famine. You're right. Yeah, that's very good. Okay. Yeah. See, it looks kind of like death, and they're all sort of like death, but I went to Wikipedia and I got this. I love doing that, by the way. It's a fantastic thing to just go and ask the web how to illustrate your PowerPoint, because it's amazing what comes back, especially if you take Safe Search off. Terrific. So the second fear is losing. Somebody mentioned being worried about job security. What is that? It isn't that there won't be a job, it's that somebody else will get it. We're in a race to the bottom, some people say. How many people have read that great author, Neil Stephenson? Snow Crash, love that book. Talks about the prosperity, the historical economic inequities being spread across the globe to the thickness that a Pakistani bricklayer would call prosperity. That's what the race to the bottom is. And we're like not at the bottom. We are the sons and daughters of privilege. We are at the top. So we got a lot to lose. So when we find out that lots of manufacturing is going to China, or when we think about a set of people who say, you know, like at least the folks in China are part of the same economic system that we're part of. They're making goods that we buy. They're accelerating innovations that we then can live on. We have this kind of ball that we roll together, this technologically based ball. But the crowd that brought down the towers, they're like, this is all wrong, you folks. There's a book, says how it's supposed to be done. You read it, that tells you what to do. All the rest of this kind of inventing things to make it better, forget it. Not how it's to be done. That's a major clash. No guarantee you'll win. No guarantee you'll win. And then, of course, my favorite, self-destruction. It seemed like, I don't know, you grew up not worried about nuclear weapons, but now you got to be worried about them. Now you got to be worried because we can make them. Right? Like it doesn't take a country to make them. You probably 5 of us could get together, use Wikipedia, we could make one. And there's all sorts of other ways that we could collapse. Global warming, we could collapse. How many people have seen is the movie The 11th Hour out yet? Does anybody know what I'm talking about, 11th Hour? 11th Hour is a movie sort of in the vein of Inconvenient Truth. It's narrated by some actor, the guy from Titanic. I'm King of the World, that guy. What's his name? Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio. Which, I don't know, sort of diminishes its credibility right away for me. But the premise is, hey, 11th hour, right? It's borrowed from the nuclear clock, right? The notion that we're very close to midnight. This is a unique century we're in. It's kind of a unique century we're in. The problems are enormous. But the possibilities of solution are also, like, right around the corner. Now, this is the thing that makes me think my dad was wrong, is this guy. Now, there's a lot of bad things about this guy. Now, I'm not even going to go into those things. But I like what he had to say in 1830 about the idea that we're on the verge of collapse. He says, people have been saying that forever. And people are going to go on saying it forever going forward. People are always going to say that because the problems always look really tough. Because we're living we're living in a world of scarcity. We're living close to the margin. We're trying pretty hard. We're out there every day trying to push the boundaries. So absolutely, things are going to look hard. But why would you think it's going to go bad? It's never gone bad before. I think that's a very healthy optimism to have. In fact, I've been reading this book. Hold on, I'm going to get to it here. I've been reading this book called The Culture of Improvement. Now, this is the kind of book you want to take on an airplane because it makes you look really smart. Because it's really thick and heavy. And like the person sits down next to you, you just crack it open and you just turn to them and say, do you realize that the loom was invented? And you just start down this incredibly boring path until they're like, okay. So this book, this guy Friedel, he's tracing all sorts of innovations that have happened since the Dark Ages. And he's tracing them in the following way. What is it about Western culture, broadly defined, that has brought about all this improvement? And what he brings it down to is, that's a thing we believe in. We believe every day that problems get solved, that they get analyzed, they get fixed. That's what we do. And we don't always know what the vector. Like, for example, he says, you can imagine somebody ripping that thesis apart and saying, well, what's better? What's worse? For who? But see, underneath that is, given that we don't always get it right, we don't always optimize the right variable, we don't always get it right for the right people, absolutely, you're right about that, but we're always trying on some level at our culture to improve it. How many engineers in here? This is what we do. That is what engineering is. That's what it is. And so every one of those problems that I talked about, as long as we approach them with the values of a culture of improvement, we win. The stresses get higher, we put more energy in. The stresses get even higher, we put even more energy in. And eventually we solve these problems. Now, the flip side to that equation is that we don't do it, right? Like, this is the battle. We either believe in this guy, King Lud. That's also from Wikipedia. King Lud, the leader of the Luddites. Everybody cool on the Luddites? Everybody know who the Luddites are? Very important in this culture now to know who the Luddites are. The Luddites, led by a guy, I guess Ned Ludd was his name. The loom is getting automated, right? He's a weaver. He sees his life being destroyed, and so he takes arms against the looms and he destroys them. And he begins to lead a set of people who are anti-technology, who are saying, look, enough with the culture of improvement, because that improvement's not improving my life, so I'm stopping it. Now, we've got a lot of Luddites in the world now. A lot. It's not just the Unabomber and Bill Joy anymore. There's all kinds of people saying, yeah, we need to not use scientific inquiry. We need to use other ways of determining the truth. We need to rein in science. And on the other side, you've got... Well, I'll tell you, if you've ever been to Macworld, that's what it's like. Yeah, I'll tell you, you go to Macworld, it's unbelievable. there's this huge crowd of people kept in various, roped off areas outside the Moscone Center, surging like it's a Who concert, and the doors open and everybody just runs to the front to see the head geek. But there's a guy who believes in the power of technology, right? Believes in it, can make things change because of it. Well, we got to choose one way or the other, and what sells it for me is this. There's no turning back here. In the bubble, you can imagine turning back. You can imagine stopping. You can imagine pulling up on the throttle. Yeah, let's just settle right here. Let's draw the boundary right here. That's fine. What happens to all then? What happens to all then? Just imagine when the power goes out. How long are you going to last, baby? My rule is eat the ice cream first. That's the first thing you do. Power goes out, eat the ice cream. Don't panic. Could be anything, right? Could be a fuse. Could be the apocalypse. Eat the ice cream. But after the ice cream is done, you start to reflect on the idea that, man, if this doesn't come back on, I'm not much of a hunter. I don't know how to clean whatever it is I might kill. And what would I kill? Hobo? This is the future we're either going to have. Either you're going to have the future I'm having. The future I'm having where I say to my kids, you can't believe it, son. We used to have to get up and walk to the TV to change the channel. It's unbelievable. Now you just hit a remote and it changes. It's incredible. Or your future will be something like, you'll be telling your kids, well, we used to be able to cook something in this box called a microwave, and it would cook in seconds. Shut up, Grandpa, and eat your hobo. And it's going to work out one way or the other. Because if you let the Luddites rule, then these problems, which we know are hard, we either solve them or we don't. We don't solve them. It doesn't turn out well. It's not like, oh, okay, let's all sing Kumbaya. Forget it. Resource scarcity will eat us alive. Now, there's a lot of people who've been pessimistic completely from the beginning of time. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of them. They're very instructive. William Stanley Jevons is one of my favorites. He writes this book called The Coal Question in the late 1800s. It was a very well-reasoned account. It says, look, it's all over, baby. Britain's ruled by coal. Our coal reserves are running out. When they run out, that's the end of us. But it didn't turn out that way. It was a very well-reasoned thing. They did actually run out of coal, a certain kind. They mine coal again because now they can get different kinds with different ways. And, I was reading something in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. The New York Times yesterday. Did you see it? It was called The Bioenergy Future. And I thought I was going to be reading about ethanol or something, right? No. Microbes that eat coal and produce natural gas. Oh, man. Oh, come on. That's awesome. Microbes that eat coal and make natural gas? So you take the dirtiest fuel and make it into one of the cleanest? Oh, I'm so proud to be in the West, I can't stand it. That's the kind of solution we got to have, right? A solution we haven't even thought about yet. That solves a problem like this. Like oil solved his problem. Right? At the time he's writing, oil is like a sideshow. And remember, we're going to talk a little bit about the pace of change and how this impacts this. He was using primitive technology to try to find the next paradigm. We're not in that place anymore. There's a whole bunch of stuff that came out of the 1960s and 1970s about how population was just going to, forget it, we're done, it's over. People were trying to drive public policy. Paul Ehrlich, in a book called The Population Bomb, was trying to drive public policy. He was making claims like, we cannot rely on people to manage their own family sizes. We have to manage them for them. Not in China, in Western societies. Because that's how critical the issue is. That's how terrifying it is. We're going to run out of food in the 1970s. I have these mathematical models to prove it. And it wasn't like he was a nut. He wasn't raving like me. Everybody believed him. He was very yes, very serious problem. Now, am I saying that we don't ever have problems to solve? No, obviously we do. That was a problem to solve. But there were a lot of vectors being placed to try to solve it. Not only trying to contain family sizes, but also trying to grow food supplies. And as it turned out, food supplies outstripped population growth in that time period. So I'm just sort of glad that you all got a chance to be born. Because if Ehrlich had his way, not so much with at least half of you. And one of you, like inferiority complex boy here, he might be the guy with the microbes that are going to eat the coal. So this is a very important thing. There's a follow-on. There was a book called Limits to Growth that came out of a group called the Club of Rome in 1972. And the Club of Rome, one of my pal Jim Bernard's favorite guys, the Club of Rome, they did some mathematical modeling. Game over. Growth can't happen, can't survive, can't make it work. Terrible. So that was 30 years ago. These guys, I highly recommend this book to you. It's a series of essays. It's not a shill for technology by any stretch of the imagination, but it talks about the shift in the debate. Less on limits to growth, more on sustainability of the lifestyle that we have. Sustainability becomes not that we can't grow, that we have to learn how to grow in a sustainable way. And that sustainability and ecological security is possible. And this is becoming a field of study. This idea of sustainability becoming a very fundamental, interdisciplinary field of study. So I'm encouraged in general that despite the fact that globalization is putting extraordinary stresses, because what does globalization really mean? For me, it means the extension of that electricity grid to more places. Right? It is the knitting of more places into the enterprise that we got started all that time ago. It is knitting all of those places together into this vast economic web. Well, I'm pretty encouraged that on balance, those kinds of problems are getting solved by technology, and very soon the flying cars will arrive. Now, the reason that I'm so encouraged is, those are my favorite graphs, everybody knows them. We have the inverse of Clark's third law going on. We have the inverse of Clark's third law. Clark's third law says, you look at a piece of technology, you don't understand it, it's magic to you. The inverse is happening to us. Magic's happening to us every day because we think we understand it. It doesn't seem very magical to us. Now, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, Willis? I like this exercise I'm getting here. This is helpful. Did you guys suffer through looking up in your elementary school library the book on hummingbirds to write your hummingbird report? Did you have to go to your elementary school library? Did they teach you about the card catalog? So think about it. You're like the last people on the face of the planet who will ever go through that. You're the last people on the face of the planet, well, at least in this part of the planet, and probably really on the face of the planet, because the choice is going to be you have no access to information resources, or you have access to them all. It's not like they're going to go in a place where there are no information resources. It's not like, oh, well, they're going to build a local lending library with those books with the plastic around the outside where it's all sort of messed up and you use the Dewey Decimal System to find the one book on hummingbirds written in 1974, and you pull it out and the one page is really thumbed because that's the place where we've always assigned that report, and because you're the first kid to get it, you can make sure everybody gets an F because you hide it. Think about 3 billion questions a day. 3 billion questions a month going to Google. 3 billion. Half of them are Britney Spears. So now there's 1.5 billion things getting answered. Now I want you to think about the fidelity with which they're answered. The fidelity with which they're answered. You used to have to answer questions with a pen. You'd take a pen, you'd write down as much as you could. Maybe you'd photocopy some stuff and build a small archive, build a set of papers. Like I'm looking. You remember, you used to have a stack of papers on your research. This is over. Now you build a network of stuff. This network of stuff, these links that go to images, integrated resources, ones you can click on to drill into this topic as deeply as you want to do it. And we always think we're done. Right? Like you think you're done. Well, yes, of course, that's it. That's it. That's how the internet works. It's like the library, only better. We're done. No! There'll be a whole set of people coming after you who go, oh, how quaint. You used to have to go look this stuff up yourself. You used to have to go and get all these individual resources and somehow package them together, but the semantic analyzers are just around the corner. They're going to surf that same web that you do, amass a set of things, put together a précis, boil it down. Well, some people say this, some people say that. Here's the links, here's the key concepts, all of that stuff done for you. How quaint the way you used to do it. And we don't think of it as magic at all. It's unparalleled in human history. How can it not have an effect? Right? Like, how can it not have an effect? Okay, you're unconvinced. I can see it. Every one of you's got a cell phone. I've been giving this talk a long time. I used to say half of you have a cell phone. Now I say confidently, everyone in this room has a cell phone. Many of you have headsets. I submit to you that a guy with a headset summoning his girlfriend, Amy appears in his head. Yes, John, that's telepathy. That's the definition of telepathy. That's what telepathy is. They burn you as a witch in the Middle Ages if you can do that. Now, this is really getting out of hand. This device here is an inheritor of a device that I've been talking about for years, right? Ever since I had my first PDA. Now, we're not talking about when I was a wee lad, right? Because there weren't any PDAs until about, 1995, 96? Does that seem fair? So what is that, like a decade? Okay, so the first one's the Palm Pilots. We're not going to count the Newton. We're not counting the Newton. Lame. So you got the Palm Pilot, right? It starts remembering phone numbers for you. But it's a really clumsy way. Like it remembers the phone number, and then you take the phone number and you type the phone number into the dot, and really clumsy way. But every year, a little better, a little shorter. And the critical dimension that's getting shorter is the amount of time it takes from intention to action. The amount of time it takes from the time you say, I would like to summon this person, to the moment in which their voice appears in your head. Now, how many of you text? How long have you been texting? Give me some numbers. 2 years? 4 years? You're on the edge if you're texting 4 years ago. You're texting with a protocol of your own devising 4 years ago. Which Kenny probably was doing. I mean, we know Kenny. He was probably doing that. But now, that text, I correspond with easily 75 people a day in these very deep, ongoing conversations about how to advance information technology at ASU. 75 conversations a day. Now, those of you who know me know that if you took this away from me and then asked me, well, so tell me those 75 things you have going on, I'd get 6. I'd get 6 of them, and one of them would be wrong. But this thing, every day, augments me. It makes it possible for me to do things I alone cannot do. To coordinate the action of many, many more people than I, by myself, would be able to do otherwise. And every year, it gets better and closer to my head. Closer. Every year like magic, but obviously, we just take it for granted. Of course. Now, that pace of technology, this is what all my optimism is based on. All of my optimism is based on the fact that we're reeling out technology at an unprecedented, unparalleled rate, and that when we do it, it causes us to be able to do it even better in the next phase. That every technology we invent empowers us to do the next phase. To do the next phase faster, to solve the problems that are unsolvable now in solvable time. And this curve is really important because it says the time it takes from invention to ubiquity is collapsing. It isn't like these have been carefully chosen. This is just how we roll now. We bring out a new format, bang, the format war's had in a year, and then whack, everybody's buying DVDs. Look at how fast HD TV is in. Look, I mean, just go to Best Buy. It's like a wonderland. It's an amazing panoply of unbroken innovations. Okay, so this is where my optimism comes from, but I realize I also have this current of pessimism, and that's what I want to talk to you about for the rest of the evening. Oh, thanks a lot. I thought things were going to be okay. See, I always talk about VRAC whenever I'm out, including Ronald. It's very clear that technology's completely transformed how we work. It's absolutely clear. Totally transformed it. Totally. You go to a factory now, compared to a factory 30 years ago, night and day. The number of people, the capacity, the supply chain that supports it, totally impossible 30 years ago. Not incrementally better, totally different. All right, now I gave a portion of this talk today to a class, and it had two little boys in it. They were 5 and 6. And when that guy showed up on the screen, they were like, "Wah!" You would not want to own stock in Lego. How do you compete with this? How many Halo players we got in here? Those are the ones who admit it. Now, my youngest son, he's 13 years old. He moved from Iowa 2 years ago. He still knows all of his Iowa friends. All of his Iowa friends know all of his Arizona friends. They play together every day, for hours a day. They know what each other looks like, in a way. They all look like that. And the way they play is to slay one another. But it's a social interaction all the same. I mean, it's a bloodthirsty one. You know what I've realized is Halo is Viking heaven. Do you guys know about Viking heaven? Like the idea behind Viking heaven. You know, the Vikings, bloodthirsty, right? And so their heaven was a place called Valhalla. And what you did every day was fight and die. And then at night you feasted, and the next morning you did it all over again. And that's what video games are. Viking heaven. So they're learning the values of the Vikings, which maybe isn't all bad. And so, but what the other thing they're doing is they're interacting in this collaborative space. Now, how many people, I've tested this out twice today, how many people know who Leroy Jenkins is? Okay, so at the appropriate time, I will call on you. So, Leroy Jenkins is a viral video, and it's about, what are they playing, World of Warcraft? Yes. And there's a bunch of guys on the internet playing World of Warcraft, and they're doing this elaborate strategy, and you hear them talking to each other. Well, you go here, and you go there, and I'll set up some suppressing fire, and we'll do this, and we'll do that. And in the middle of this 5-minute long plan, a guy goes, "Leroy Jenkins!" and comes running down with his machine gun, just starts shooting everything in sight, and their whole team gets killed. My point, other than to entertain, is that's a set of people doing collaborative work over the internet. They've grown up doing it. It's totally changed how we play. And every year it gets better. Right? I don't need to tell you what the graphics are like, how immersive the experience is, how interactive it can be. And yet here you all sit. And here I stand, yakety, yakety, yak. And every day, all around the country, this is how it is. And it is driving me crazy. I believe the whole thing comes down to this. The pace of innovation at work, at play, Apple, Google, Amazon, Deere, manufacturer X, manufacturer Y, out of control, baby. Every year, amazingly more powerful, amazingly better. What feeds it? Well, what used to feed it was resources and money, and it was expensive to develop these new technologies. But we've got breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough happening now. We're short on people. We're short on people that can do this. We're short on the ways that we train people to do this. And I think more than anything, we're short on the mechanism by which we get people to even want to do this in the first place. Like, I've got the hat on, she's got the hat on. You've got the little table, they've got the little table. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. You can look at Frank Rhodes, President Emeritus of Cornell, who after he was done, I asked him, I said, how could you write a book so scathing about education? Like, do you see what he says up there? They have not diverged, the methods of teaching have not diverged much from the methods of Socrates, except most faculty have moved inside. I mean, that's scathing. He goes on. Largely untouched. A cottage industry, uninfluenced by modern technology. Let me ask you a question. Does that conform to your experience? Does that conform to your experience? The technology that you bring to your education, you bring. The institution doesn't bring it to you. Am I right? You bring whatever technology you use. So, when I give this talk, especially to established educators, I put them off a bit, I think. And so they say to me, you're clueless. Technology is not what education is about. The learning of skills is what education is about. And the learning of skills is being done in the time-honored way, and the skills of critical thinking, and the ability to amass research, and the ability to do quantitative reasoning, and so forth. Those skills we are inculcating, and so leave us alone. No. Nope. Thought about it a lot. That's Ray Kurzweil. He's seated at a table. He represents all of the human race, and he's writing as fast as he can the things that people can still do better than computers. And he's sticking them up on the wall. And all the stuff on the floor represents all the things that used to be on the wall but aren't anymore because of this exponential pace, this exponential capacity of machines. In 1954, I think, Samuels invented the the checkers player. And that checkers player could beat you. You any good at checkers? Yeah, they clean the floor with you. How about you? Any checker players in here? Come on, who will challenge Samuels? No? No way. But something really significant just happened this year with respect to the game of checkers. They solved it, Kenny. They solved it. What do you mean they solved it? They solved it. Every game, every move, every connection, win, lose, draw, all in a table. How interesting it is for a checker player to play you. You make a move. Oh, quaint, 5'11". Here you go. Plays it out right out of memory. A computer plays you like you play a kid playing tic-tac-toe, although not really, because most of you don't know all the moves in tic-tac-toe. You know most of them. But he knows all of them. You say, oh, but it isn't the same kind of intelligence. Whatever. So, what I'm telling you is, how long does it take to get to the frontier? Now, I'm going to use calculus. Everybody in here a calculus person? A lot of calculus people? All right, how many people could do the chain rule? I'm going to call on you. Haha, that was cool. Like all these hands go up. Oh, I'm going to call on you. Oh, no. Chain rule. So I want somebody to speak for the chain rule. Who will speak for the chain rule? Who will say, my life is richer because I know the chain rule? Why is your life richer? Because you know the chain rule.
I forgot it.
He's already forgotten the chain rule. Jim Bernard knows the chain rule. He's always known the chain rule. It sickens me. It's really jealousy that drives this whole thing. Will no one speak for the chain rule? Quotient rule? How about that whole integration by parts thing? Did that illuminate your understanding? What about calculus as a whole? Will no one speak for calculus? I'll speak for calculus. Calculus is huge. Calculus allows us to understand things in the limit. You know, I was talking to my 12-year-old the other day, and I was explaining to him the concept of a limit. And he was like, you mean you can figure out what happens as something gets closer to zero or closer to infinity? Totally got it. Was like, I've always wondered about that. Now, he might have just been sucking up to his dad. I don't know. But that concept can be introduced really early. Really early. But not if you've got to grind it out by hand with a piece of sharpened wood. Because when you start grinding it out with the piece of sharpened wood, you forget what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Your stack, there she blows. You can't remember what you were doing. That's what the paper's for. And you grind it out, and then you look back at the rest of the paper. Oh, yes, that's right, I remember. I have 40 more of these to do. That's like when you pop the stack all the way back. No wonder no one remembers calculus. It's like torture. Well, so you are advanced with respect to calculus than I. Because I assume when you learned calculus, you were permitted to use a calculator. Yes? And that calculator did symbolic manipulation. How many of you still have your calculator? What do you intend to do with it when you go to work? What's that? Yeah, like, can you imagine yourself in some way using this thing? What will you do? You'll be in line at Bruegger's? The only place people use calculators is in school. Why? Because like real people use machines to do this. Big machines, serious machines, machines that get better every day. How are we going to get kids to the frontier if we insist on them being able to do everything by hand first? Like how many people will be using computational fluid dynamics? Not so many, I'm guessing. And yet that will become the major way that we understand many, many systems. But unless you can do it by hand, you're not permitted to touch it? Well, this just is not going to work. And what are we doing about it? Nothing. Like we're not doing nothing about it. This is driving me insane. We're not doing anything about it. Well, we are doing some things. My son's high school, they banned electronic devices. They're really proud of themselves. They should just rename the place Luddite High. Yippee! We banned electronic devices. No iPods in here. Is this the way we're supposed to go? Should we not be embracing these devices and making them part of education every day? Okay, so I have two reasons why this doesn't happen. Oh, wait. One more thing about why it's important. Because that's happening. Every day that goes by, you want a job where you mean something to the economy. You have to be smarter than you were the day before. It might be, remember somebody said, what about losing your job or local job security? Oh, you have a job. It provides value. Somebody else can do it cheaper. Gone. Now you have to get some new job. Well, you are probably being employed at the maximum of your capability. And so unless you're going to somehow go get some more education, you're going to slide down that curve. Now you guys are safe as houses. Let me just say that to you all. safe as houses. You all have the skills necessary to compete in this economy and to continue to compete in this economy. But where are you on this curve? And what is happening to everybody else as we teach them like it was 1950? So I see this as a very big crisis. I see this as a very, very big problem. And I have two reasons why it happens. So let me give you a little bit of background. I'm going to only take 10 minutes to do this. I work at Arizona State University, and the president there is a guy named Michael Crow. And President Crow sees this problem of contribution to economy being dependent on higher education as a very big problem, as I do. And so he knows that we need another way to deliver not only K-12, but higher education to a much broader set of people, but without diminishing the excellence and increasing the impact that that institution has on its local place. And so he's undertaken this major restructuring over a 10-year period of the institution to try to achieve that level of access while maintaining this level of impact. Now, what does that mean in pragmatic terms? It means that he's going to grow this institution from 50,000 students to 100,000 students. And he's going to try to keep the excellence the same. Now, this is a hard thing to do. You can do a lot of things in the world. You could make the institution more excellent. What's the standard way that you do that? Well, what was that? Decrease the number of students. Just continue to call the students to pick the best that you possibly can. What makes Harvard great? You don't get to go. And you don't get to go. Right? The very definition of Harvard is we're selective. How many people are they educating? Same number they did 10 years ago. How many are they going to educate 10 years from now? Same number. As we get to 300 million people who need education, what significance will that have? I mean, interesting for the few people who go. What about everybody else? And this idea that we'll somehow give everybody else some kind of lesser education is not going to work. Because these are complex problems that we have, and that bar is sliding to the right every day. So technology will be the key, my claim. That's the only thing we've got that gives this kind of gift. The only goose that gives these kind of golden eggs is the one that gets 10 times cheaper and 10 times more capable every year. The one that gives you that thumb drive in your pocket, that those of you who have seen me talking about this for years say, yeah, I wonder what he's going to use now. Is it like half a terabyte you can get on a thumb drive now? Seriously, what's a $100 thumb drive now? Say again? 4 gig. Okay, when I first started doing this, it was like 40 meg. So this idea that we have this goose that could give those eggs, maybe that will be our salvation. Except where Apple and Amazon and Google are totally setting the pace, blowing away what was possible just a few years ago, our institution's ability to harness that technology lags way, way behind. So I don't see anybody going, no, it isn't true. Universities were one-time technology leaders. When you came to the university, you used better technology than you had at your house. What's funny? It's true. They were. When you got your email address, you got it at a university, and when you left the university, they made you give it back, and your company didn't give you one. Your internet connection was yours at the university. You could use it. When you went to your company, no, don't have them. Don't even know what it is. But now, how many people in here own their own machine? Everyone. Everyone. How many of you own 2? We found 60% of our students own 2. When you use a common computer, is it better or worse than yours? In my experience, the ones that we deploy for you are worse. Our ability to keep up with your investment, low. Didn't used to be this way. And it gets worse every year. Every year, we struggle as an institution to provide less and less to you. I have a system at ASU that provides disk space to students. Anyone care to guess how much disk space you get by default? 50 megabytes. What's the point? That's 5 songs. Are we stupid? Like, do we just not read the paper? It's all about resource scarcity. It's expensive to provide even 50 megabytes to 65,000 students. It's really expensive. Well, then how come Google can provide 2 gigabytes of storage to anybody that walks in the door? Because they operate at a completely different scale. A scale that I can't even imagine operating at. And yet, I still have a vertically integrated industry running my IT. We only just stopped twisting the cables ourselves. Because that's our history. We invented all this stuff, and so naturally. So, got to have a new strategy. Cottage industry is over. That's one of the things holding our institutions back. Former leadership executing the old song, even though it doesn't do what it needs to do anymore. And so, got to get out of this business. Got to. Got to get out of it. But who to get in with? This is the most amazing thing. At ASU, we said, hey, let's get out of the email business. We've been in it for 25 years. Let's get out of the email business. Let's not get out of the business of having an email domain, because that's a good thing. An email domain's cool. It makes it possible for you to have a common address space, to know who your neighbors are, to know to accept the mail, there's a lot of good reasons to have a directory. But let's just get out of the provisioning of the services. And so in 2 weeks, we went from the old email system to a new one. 2 weeks. 65,000 accounts. Provisioned, but not enabled. And then gave every student a choice. Like, you log into the old email client, and a button came up, said, what are you, a knucklehead? Go to Google. What? You don't know the difference between a megabyte and a terabyte? Get going. 300 students an hour converted. By the end of the first week, 10,000. By the end of the first month, 27,000. By the end of the first term, 55,000. Suddenly, we were pretty important to Google because we had a huge domain. But that's not even the most important part. Most important part is that we're no longer on our curve, we're on Google's curve. We're no longer responsible for developing things on our own platform, having them shipped to us, putting them up. Like, think about what it takes to deploy Exchange. Here's what it takes. First, people go to class to learn what machines to buy. They buy them. They configure them. They array them. Then they go buy the software. They install it. It doesn't work. They call up people. Oh, yick and yak. Connect this to that. Oh, okay. Oh, no, it still doesn't work. Patch this, patch that. Do this, do that. Oh, we're up. Cool, we have a new version. We're sending it to you. This is the life. Or you can do it this way. Well, what is this way? Every morning you wake up, and the elves have made you something new. No, I'm serious. It's like the elves in the shoemaker. I swear to you. Every morning you wake up, there's something new. The first day, it was mail. Then it was calendaring. Then it was the personal start page. All of this in your domain. Then it was docs and spreadsheets. Hey, you can have collaborative apps that interact in your domain space. Awesome. And then, presentations. Boom. Do I do anything? What do I pay for this? Nothing. Zero. That's what I'm talking about. Maybe they're the only people in the world that do it? How do we distribute multimedia down at Iowa State University? iTunes University, baby. What do we pay? Say it with me now. Nothing. What do we get? Well, can you imagine a better infrastructure for distributing multimedia than iTunes? Like, go ahead, imagine it. Just imagine it. Then imagine building it. Then imagine maintaining it. What do I pay? Nothing. Why? Because something very unusual is going on in the world. Things that used to be really expensive are becoming really cheap. When I have to buy disk space, when I have to buy repeatable infrastructure, forget it. I buy it in the old-fashioned way, at the old scales. When they do it, it's like technology from an advanced alien culture. You can't possibly keep up with them. So if you can't beat them, join them, baby. So that's one thing. Remember I said there were two? I firmly believe that all we have to do is throw off our old way of provisioning information technology services, and we can get on the state of the art like it's a rocket car. So what's the holdup? Culturally, we don't know how to move certain institutions forward. We don't know how to move government forward, and we don't know how to move education forward. We just don't know how. We don't know how, culturally, to make any kind of significant advance there. And every one of you knows the coded message that I'm sending there. There's a set of people who are used to doing things in a way. That's the way we do them. Changing that way, impossible. Why? Well, why would I change? What's my incentive? Where would I do it? Why would I bother? I only have one possibility. Revolution. I think the only way to do it is revolution. And there's only one group of people that starts revolutions. Students could do it. Students could do it. Students could say, hey, you know, it's interesting that you still print the catalog. We want the catalog like Amazon. We want to be able to review the catalog. We want to be able to go in and see what the courses are. We want to know what it's like. We want to know what the electronic resources are. I want to preview the course. I want to watch the lectures before I buy. Because this is a purchase I'm making, I want to see some stuff here. I want a wiki in every one of my courses so that the people who took the course before can leave tracks about what it's like to take this course, how hard it is, what resources they used, what was valuable, so that I can use their stuff as a foundation. Now, I taught a course here called, it was like a computer graphics course. And rather than saying to everybody who took that computer graphics course, all right, now, every term we start from scratch, you begin from a blank piece of code, write the code to make a circle, you know, good luck with that. Like, how far can you get in a term doing that? You know, by the time the term's over, okay, you make 4 circles and they're like 3D and you revolve them and, you know, how could you hold anybody's interest? So what we did instead is we said, the internet is open game. Download anything you want. Just credit it, start from it, add something to it, move it forward. Unbelievable what you can create. Like literally unbelievable what you can create. That principle baked into a wiki for every course lets you have, like instead of flushing it at the end of every term. No. Adding to it every term as a resource for you to come back to after you've left. Or I guess you could like continue to keep your notebooks in the garage, right, as everyone else has done since time immemorial. I think the only people who are going to change this are students. Now, it's happened, like at the University of Michigan and the dental school, they managed to get every lecture in a podcast. They did it by saying, we'll do it. We'll do it, no problem. We'll bring the stuff. We'll do that. We'll do it. Not that hard. We will do it. You just have to let us do it. Well, that's hard to say no. If you'd flip it on the other side and say, well, would you do this for us? Oh, no, too much money, yick and yak, intellectual property, this reason, that reason, forget it. But if you say, we want this, we need to do it, we can do it, help us to make it possible. Absolutely. That's where this innovation will come if it comes at all. And if it doesn't come, then I don't get it. I don't get how it can be that information technology transforms every other domain and leaves this untouched, untouched, untouched.